Good morning.
Morning.
So what I need, tell condos to pipe down. I've been trying that for years.
Hi, Mary.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The folks down in the conference room, oh, there you go. There's the video.
All right. Can you hear us down here?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Ed, I always thought you as quasi-old, not semi-old.
Yeah, that was kind of a joke, Tom, for some panel I'm on with a bunch of young lawyers, and they needed somebody that was semi-old. So I'm trying to figure out how to take that off.
It's working for me. I think I'm in the next category up.
Fun never ends.
So looking at the screen, and it looks as though we have the full membership of the Apportionment Board is present, together with
Okay.
Chris Winters from the Secretary of State's office and Eric Covey likewise.
That's right, Tom. Just so you know, Eric is running the virtual meeting upstairs, and I'm here in the boardroom.
Okay, and Nick, that's correct. You're in the right place. Don't worry. We're all in this together. At least we're trying. And I don't see anyone yet from the Legislative Council or John Adams from VCIG, but we'll, why don't we call the meeting to order and welcome everyone. We're scheduled to go from until 11 a.m. According to the posted agenda. We have, just to review the agenda, review and approval of the minutes of the September 13 meeting, a period of public comment. Take a look at the draft synopsis of the board consensus on single-member districts, the single-member district question, and then reports on public interactions, and maybe most importantly, this description of how board members are doing with mapping efforts. Updates, if any, from Legislative Council, VCGI, and the Secretary of State's office, and set the dates for the next meetings and any other business. Is there anything anyone would like to add to the agenda before we get started? Keeping in mind, if it comes up later on, we'll be flexible. Okay, well then I bring us to the review and approval of September 13 meeting minutes agenda item. The meeting minutes were posted. Does anyone have any additions or corrections or would like to make a motion?
Move to adopt the meeting minutes as presented.
So Jeremy moves to adopt the posted minutes.
Second.
It's been seconded by Jean Albert. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, please say no. And we've adopted the minutes. Thank you. And I thank the Secretary of State's office. These are nicely detailed meeting minutes that I think help any members who were not present, and certainly others, members of the public, to get a sense for what the board has been doing. That brings us to the public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who would like to address the board during public comment? Or those of you who are here from the public just checking us out? Okay, well, sorry, Nick, did you wish to address us?
Yeah, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Nick. I'm a student and interested in the redistricting process. So I came to see how the process is working. And I guess I would speak in favor of single member districts. I saw that was on the agenda. And also, if Huntington could be kept with the rest of the Chittenden East districts, I know that's like the one, I was reading through the minutes, and that's like the one thing that every public comment seems to be about is for that, but it's a big concern among our like area of Chittenden County. So that's, I guess, my 2 cents.
Nick, where are you a student at?
I'm currently at Suffolk University in Boston, but I live in Jericho.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. There's a screen out there with the name Andy McLean on it. Would you like to address us, or are you just here to observe and listen?
Sure. So I had watched the recording of your last meeting, and I got to thinking about the statute that governs what you're doing, and some of the comments you folks made. I would like to comment on them. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to do that.
Well, that's up to you. If you wanted to give us some brief comments now, you could also follow up with something in writing if you prefer.
Sure. So I'm a part of the Wyndham-Bennington district currently, and basically the statute seems to direct you to create homogeneous districts that share economic and cultural and political ties. And during your last meeting, there was concern raised that, hey, some of these districts are not seeing a diversity of candidates. A lot of incumbents are running, and it occurred to me that perhaps that's a sign of success. If you're going to create homogeneous districts, that might be what you wind up with. I think the statute is not asking you to create a wonderful election with lots of choices for people. It's asking you to pull a conversation together on your floor, as in your body. It's a different sort of a concept. For instance, one gentleman made the comment he wanted a colorblind map. I think the statute's asking you to do exactly the opposite, to have detailed racial information. And if you can at all create districts where it's impossible to get elected unless you're brown, then you need to do that. You need to pull those voices in. you need to give those voices a representative in your body. I think that the statute, it's counterintuitive that you would create homogeneous districts. You want typically an election to elect a governor or to elect a president, somebody who's going to represent everybody. That's a different ballgame. What you're doing is more akin to voter registration law, where you're inviting voices into the conversation. My district functions very well. We're a bunch of mountain towns, poor, rural towns. And we elected a legislator who really changed the conversation single-handedly on education finance, Laura Sibilia. She represents us. Our voice wasn't diluted by having some of us included in this population center district or that population center district. A homogeneous, connected by economics and politics and other concerns, a homogeneous district who happened to be made up of just the constituency who was being hurt by education finance, elected somebody to represent them, and she did that, and it's changed your conversation. Just some thoughts on colorblind maps, on incumbency and a lack of diversity in candidates, and the law, the statute that governs you and how it's interpreted. I think it's a beautiful, elegant statute, but it's counterintuitive, and I just wanted to bring that perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else joining us from the public who would? I don't see anyone else. Chris, can you see? Am I missing anyone?
I don't see anyone else, Tom.
Okay, I'm seeing everybody in the meeting on one screen, so I don't think there's more than one screen to go to.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. The next item on our agenda is to take a look at the what I drafted based upon what I think was a consensus at the last meeting about our debate over single member and two-member districts, whether one or the other should have priority or be a target or a goal for the board. And I think there had been a desire expressed at earlier meetings to sort of settle that for the purposes of giving us some guidance as we do our mapping work. So when we get to some tough spots, we can go back to it and say, okay, that's what we agreed on. Let's try to stick with that. Understanding that this may not solve certain problems as we get down to specific choices that are difficult choices. I'll open it up to the full board. I don't want to say much more.
Whoa.
All right. I guess I'll start. I guess I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we need to adopt this. I think it's good that you have these listed, as some of the conclusions and takeaways. Do we need to adopt this as a board? I'm not convinced. I mean, I think it's a useful summary, but do we need to adopt it? Not sure.
I'm not sure we need to either, Jeremy. If we're comfortable with a general sense of consensus about it, understanding that when we get to particular choices, it may not provide the final push of guidance to get us over that hump. we can just keep it as part of our body of work and use it as it may prove to be useful.
Tom?
Go ahead, Tom.
I think the statement summarizes the statutory requirements quite well. But I don't think it really gets to the heart of the debate on single member versus multi-member districts. It seems to evade that question. As such, I don't think it advances our discussion very much.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
This is a little, maybe it's a bit of a point of order or some version of that. You had mentioned, Tom, that that this was an action item. So I wonder if we are at a point where this needs to be moved. Did you want it? If we want it to be voted on, I think we need to move it and so that we can then talk about it. If that wasn't your intention, then I suppose it's all fine, just to talk about it. I just want to ask that question before I make any other further comment.
And Tom, this is Chris, do you want to share that document so that
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
the public know what we're talking about here? Eric, can you do that to put it up on the screen?
And just one moment.
Gene, I know there are sort of two schools of thought or practices in Vermont about this. I'm not sure there's a single right way, and those are, in order to be able to talk about something that's an action item, somebody has to move its adoption and have it seconded before you can discuss it. And the other point of view or approach is you don't have to do that. And I guess I'm agnostic about that. Yeah.
It looks like I've shared the wrong.
But as I indicated with my comment, my response to Jeremy, we could take the approach that this is what it is. It's a summary of the discussion we had. It doesn't, as Tom Koch correctly pointed out, it doesn't ask the board to take a position on all these other constitutional and legal things being equal. Does the board prefer single member districts over 2-member districts? You know, again, subject to the constitutional and legal mandates that we're operating under. Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll just say, given that it sounds like we're just having a discussion, we don't have to move it. I did want to say, I thought it was a good, I wanted to thank you for preparing it. I think it's a good summary from my perspective of an approach I think is appropriate for the board, namely to acknowledge what the statutes and Constitution do or do not say about this question, and therefore, you know, the fact that, as you put, there's no particular guidance provided one way or the other to the board about it. And then on the other side, what actual guidance is provided in statute or in the Constitution. So I think that it's helpful to me to have it kind of laid out in a way that is direct on those points.
Yeah, Tom, I think this is a great summary of the law and the guardrails that we have to operate within. I don't think there's anything we need to support or oppose or agree with or disagree with in terms of a vote, because it is what it is. I mean, we have no choice but to agree with this. It's the law. But it doesn't, as you pointed out, make a preference for how we steer within those lanes.
Again, I really think the way we need to get at this is to develop the best, at least 2 maps, possibly 3. One single member, one multi-member, the way we have, and then you suggested another compromise where we take towns within, who are whole towns, and say if they have 2 members or 3 or 4, they must be subdivided. I guess 3 or 4, that goes without saying, but 2, Barrytown, for example, has 2 members and we haven't subdivided it. A map could be generated that would require that Barrytown subdivided into single member districts. So we have as many single member districts as we can, while respecting municipal boundaries. And I think you made that suggestion at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So I think if we work on developing the best maps we can, then we can, as a board, vote which to recommend to the General Assembly.
Yeah.
And submit all of the maps as possibilities, but with our recommendation.
I think we can sort of wait and see how that plays out. I think that the General Assembly and others are expecting the Apportionment Board to make a recommendation for a House map and a Senate map. And if we also say we have developed some alternatives that might be more, well, that we just offer up for consideration, or that might be more appealing as additional resources, that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it, Tom. But I think that even if we have to take a divided vote on the map that we are proposing, I think we're probably obliged to do that. One of the I think the geniuses of this process is that we do send, in the House map, we do send an initial proposal out to the towns and get their feedback. And 10 years ago, that proved to be a big part of the process by which the board finally came to its own consensus, by listening to, not necessarily agreeing with, the listening to all of the feedback we got about those choices. So I'm willing to have us not take action on this, put it aside, come back to it if we think we need to. But where the rubber meets the road is going to be voting on a particular map as the map that the board is going to be recommending for adoption by the General Assembly. Jeremy?
So as you're talking about the report that we're producing for the General Assembly, I'm realizing more and more that the language that you have in here should go in that report as a sort of milepost along how we made some of the decisions that we're making, and especially to accompany um, the maps to kind of explain, how we came, not that we came to a consensus necessarily about the single member districts, but to at least provide a little bit of a justification. So I think if we can set this aside and just hang on to it, and then perhaps incorporate it in whole or in part later, I think that could be valuable.
Tom, I have a question about why, I mean, I appreciate this as sort of an academic exercise when you wanted to distill the conversation, and I'm going to be a little bit less diplomatic. I think you left out some of the conversation, which was, even though there may be some debate about the sociological and political science of it, there's some empirical fact that is undisputed. For example, that it costs less to run in a single seat district than a 2-seat district. I mean, it's just a matter of numbers. And as the gentleman previously pointed out, the statute doesn't necessarily ask us to consider that, but I think, as Rob was alluding to, we can consider whatever we want as long as we stay within the guardrails. And so, the statute is so broad. It reminds me of this podcast I heard the other day on the constitutional definition of religion, which is essentially there isn't any. And that allows for some great variation in how the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, interprets religion. So I think it tries to, the statutory definition and the case law is, as Jeremy said, it is what it is. But I think it's our factoring into what to take into consideration is a little bit more nuanced than that. And I also think that this is, I mean, if it's supposed to be a summary of what we discussed last time, don't the minutes capture that?
Well, I think it was attempting to go beyond the minutes, or build upon the minutes, and avoid at this stage, in a sense, having the board take a vote somewhat in the outside of the context of a specific redistricting proposal on the 2-member versus single member preference point. Thinking that it makes more sense to take that kind of a vote in the context of a particular map proposal than it does in the sense, somewhat in the abstract. And I know people who've run in both districts over the last 30 years, and if we really wanted to have a full-blown debate about this, it would probably take a couple of hours to do it. And I know people who have spent less money in 2-member districts running than in single-member districts. That all gets heavily bound up in incumbencies and other localized and personalized factors. But as I said, I'm willing, my own preference is to defer that kind of a decision and choice until we get to a vote on a particular map or competing map proposals. And I think that's the way it will play. That's a better way for it to play itself out. And we can set this aside. And I like, Jeremy, I liked your comment that this may be a good starting point for some portion of the final report. Mary, did you want to weigh in on any of this?
Just to say that I would dispute Ed Adrian's assertion that it's cheaper to run in a single member district. I think that was probably true when the main focus was driving around and knocking on people's doors, but more and more I see people using virtual means of communication. Zoom meetings are very popular down in this neck of the woods. Email, phone banking. So I just think it's unproven.
Well, if I may, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're talking about as far as cost. I mean, it still takes time and energy. So if you have twice as many people you have to reach, whether you're sending out flyers, whether you're doing Facebook, whether you're knocking on doors, whether you're doing phone banking, if you have to call 1,000 people versus 500 people, Mary, it's going to take twice as much time. I mean, it's an indisputable fact. I have to strongly disagree with you.
So I'm going to agree with Ed on this one. Having run in a 2-seat district and having helped on campaigns in 1-seat districts, still the gold standard for running is still knocking on doors and making direct contact. And that's not true just in Burlington, but also in the more rural places. Not that my district is super rural, but there were certainly very rural parts that I was not able to get my Volkswagen Golf up the driveways when I ran that year. But so, yeah, I mean, I think there are more people, therefore there are more people you have to contact. So whether that's more Facebook ads or more front porch forum impressions, or even if you do it electronically, it still ends up being more expensive.
If I could just add to Ed and Jeremy's points, that the number one way to reach people, despite all the electronic advances we've had, is direct mail. And direct mail is expensive. Not everybody has a computer. Not everybody is hooked in online. And if you want to reach those voters, you have to put a stamp on a piece of paper and send it through, and that costs money. And in a 2-member district, there are twice as many of them as in a single-member district.
And not only that, and I don't even know if we broached this last time, but look at it from the other perspective. And again, respectfully, Mary, I think this is undisputable. If you have 1,000 people you represent versus 500 people, and I hear what Tom's saying, of course there are going to be differences depending on how active a particular constituency is, but all things being equal, that means that legislator is going to have to work twice as hard. Now, how is that fair to anybody? How is that fair to the constituent who has a legislature who has to split their time into smaller segments? And how is that fair to the legislator who only gets paid the same, or however you want to quantify it, represents twice as many people for the same amount of glory? That's a joke, but you know what I'm saying. It cuts both ways. And again, it's just sheer numbers, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many days in the year. So
I'd just like to observe that I just find it interesting that sometimes in this conversation about single versus double member districts, it's presented as indisputable that people in 2-member districts get better representation than people in single member districts. But now we're getting the view that double member districts are actually worse for the candidate. So I think that it really comes down to your perspective, and some single member districts are going to be better than some doubles, and some will be the other way around. And depending on your perspective as a candidate, as a constituent, I don't think there's one, and then including everything else we discussed 2 weeks ago, I think what we're just getting at is this isn't mathematics. And I would have to say mathematics is the one area where there are undisputed facts.
Well, just jump in there. In the memo that I put together for the last meeting, I did hit on that very point, is that there are benefits to single member districts, there are benefits to 2-member districts, but as long as you have a hybrid system of single and 2-member districts, there will always be debates around inequity. Which is better, which is worse. You can't really solve it, But if you go to all single member or all two member districts, then that equity argument goes away because everybody's being treated in the same way.
So my sense here is that we're not going to, I mean, my preference is to not take a vote on what I drafted because I think it's been superseded by the conversation we're having, and it would be out of place. And more importantly, and more strongly, I think having us, in a sense, take the vote on single member versus two member districts in the context of a particular mapping proposal just makes more sense because it puts everything that we're talking about, including the law, into the same mix. And we can discuss at that juncture whether a map proposal is following the law in all relevant respects. And if it is, then the choice, the preference for single member districts is in my view, perfectly appropriate in that context. Is that okay to proceed in that fashion?
With me, yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm glad we showed them on that one. All right. Thank you. And this is just getting us warmed up a bit more for the grand finale. The next agenda item is updates and so forth. We have, there are 4 sort of public events coming up this week and next week. Tomorrow evening, and I may be wrong, excuse me, on the starting times of these, so please correct me if I get them wrong, but on September 28th, there is an online meeting sponsored, at least in part, by the Vermont Public Interest Research Group at 6 p.m. that will has, I think, about a 30-minute segment for members of the Apportionment Board who want to participate to be heard. And then on Wednesday evening, the 29th, there are the 5 towns in the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District at 6 p.m. are holding a forum, both in person and remotely. On October 1 at 3:30 p.m. at Middlebury College, there is an online forum with also the possibility of attending on campus about legislative redistricting. And I know that I'm going to be participating in that one. And then on October 7th, I think it is, the League of Women Voters group from the Burlington area at 6 p.m. I think is hosting a forum. That we'll have the minutes reflect those, and if anyone is interested in participating in those or tuning into them and needs assistance, let me know, and I think I can figure it out. Those are the ones I'm aware of. And then in terms of personal interactions, I think I shared this with the board. I had an email exchange over the weekend with two people who live in Grand Isle, who are concerned about the fact that in that 2-member district, which includes all of the island towns and portion of the west side of Milton, both of the House members are from the West Milton portion of the district, and they want, their request is that the Apportionment Board and the General Assembly in turn provide somehow for there to be at least one House member who actually lives in the islands. So we went back and forth on that, and I explained how the gist of how we do our work and the factors that we have to consider and the trade-offs and choices that need to be made. And you're welcome to share that, or in as you encounter your own have your own encounters with the constituents and friends and community members, use that to help talk as talking points, if you would, for those types of discussions. Anyone else have anything to report in terms of interactions with the public or others that it's worth sharing at this point?
But the Stowe Reporter did an article on reapportionment, interviewed myself and Heidi Sherman and some other folks that led to a little bit of online dialogue, but you know, similar support for single member districts, and a couple people chiming in saying that they supported the multi-member districts. Not a whole lot.
Could you post a link to that story if that's not behind a paywall?
Sure.
I got contacted by a member of the Barrytown Board of Civil Authority asking about single member, multi-member, and that member was disappointed in my response and would prefer multi-member.
Did you say why?
A little bit difficult to find the right place to draw the line in Barrytown, because we have Barry City that cuts into it and Barrytown wraps around it. So a little bit complicated, but I'm not exactly sure why he preferred.
Any noise down your way, Mary?
No, I have not heard anything from anybody except, well, how's it coming? And I say, well, it's complicated.
Right. Mary, I was at a reception in Brattleboro last 2 Sundays ago that had nothing to do with reapportionment, but I got it. It was a friendly setting. I got asked by a couple of old friends from the legislature how it was going, but that was mainly it. How is it going? Didn't get down to details. Jeannie, anything on your end?
There was an article in the Addison Independent, but it was quite a while ago, so nothing new. I think I'd already mentioned that to the group, or at least I recall mentioning it. And same as Mary, I do get questions, but nothing official at this point in terms of requests for presentations, at least not yet.
Ed, are you hearing any anything in the Burlington? The people starting to get interested in it or not? From your, you can tell.
I know that the senators seem to be quite interested, the Chittenden County senators. I did have a CAX interview a couple of weeks ago because they couldn't reach you after our last meeting for some reason. I'm not sure why they picked me, probably because I'm loud in Twitter, but I don't think I really said anything that was that important, but I'll put the link in the dialogue. I suspect that at least with the Senate, Tom, once there's something on the table map-wise, then there'll be more piqued interest.
Okay.
Tom, this is Jeannie.
Yes, hi.
I remembered I wanted to ask about, from the meeting 2 weeks ago, one of the folks who zoomed in was Representative Sims from, I think it's Orleans, Caledonia,
From Greensboro.
and, or Craftsbury, actually, I think. But anyway,
Craftsbury.
that area, yeah. And I just wondered if because she expressed some interest in there being a opportunity for folks in her region to ask questions or just hear more about the process. I wondered if that's something I'd be happy to follow up if that would be helpful, or maybe it's already happened.
I haven't. Why don't you feel free to do that, and just remind her that, I mean, there is the Board of Civil Authority generated public hearing process. But if she would like to help organize something in advance of that or beyond that, I'm sure we can get one or two apportionment board members to participate, depending on this timing and the scheduling.
Okay, I can
Thank
do
you.
that.
Jeremy, anything you're hearing or heard from?
No, not really. Just the VPerg rad thing tomorrow.
Okay. I think now we can turn to the mapping efforts. Thanks, Rob, for posting what you posted, and I don't know whether that can be put on the screen or not. And that was done in District Builder, Rob?
Yeah, District Builder.
Tom, Eric Covey can put that up on his screen if you'd like that to happen.
Let's see what it looks like. Sure.
Just give me a minute to pull it up.
While he's taking his minute, I just really want to reemphasize it's a work in progress. There's a lot wrong with it, but at least a jumping off point for discussion.
And while we're waiting, I would love it if, for purposes of our own use, but also for the public and the people from the towns who are interested in following this, if we could have copies of the trial or draft working models copied in a way that makes them easy to share and also to print somehow.
Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, feel free to direct me, Rob.
Rob, that looks exactly like the current map.
Well, that's actually where I started. I went through the way I created this was I started in the northwest corner, and then went over to the northeast corner when it got complicated. And then when that got complicated, I went down to the south and started moving up. So it all kind of converged towards the center and towards Chittenden County, which I did last. But I tried, basically, I had the original map that we passed 10 years ago, or that the legislature passed 10 years ago, and tried as best as I could to sort of stick with the current district lines, and then, modifying them so that we would have all single member districts. But generally keeping the same geography. So instead of creating 2 districts out of whole cloth, you'd sort of take one district that already existed, and if it was a 2-member district, you'd find a logical breaking point. That worked well some places, not as much in the other. The Northeast Kingdom, those 2 districts there, the light blue and the dark blue, they both lost population. So one is going to either grow into the other at the expense of the other, and or it's going to have to, both of them are going to have to grow out into the other districts that are to their west, or in the case of the light blue district, to the south. That was one problem area. Another, the real big problem area that I came up with towards the end of the map, which is why I think I ended up with 149 districts, is in Chittenden County, particularly in the northern part of Chittenden County with Essex, because Essex has grown significantly to the point where it does not need the population of Westford anymore to complete the number of districts, which of course puts Westford in a position where it has to go. It has to find a home, and all of those Franklin County, Georgia, Georgia is sort of in the same position as Stowe, in that it has been a single member, single town district for a long time. Well, now it's too big for that. But St. Albans has grown to the point where it's too big for 3 seats, but not quite big enough for a clean 4-seat district. So you squeeze that balloon, and it goes out there. So I actually have part of that district is now in with Fairfield. Part of that little chunk of St. Albans there is now in with Fairfield. Whether that's the most elegant solution to this or not, I don't know. I'd love to get some input from local people on all of these things. The folks in Grand Isle will be happy, because that actually works out pretty well. Where if you take at least the folks in the Northern Islands, turning that into 2 single-member districts, where you have the Northern Islands and then the southern part of the islands in Milton, and then you create a 2-member district out of the other portion of Milton, and that actually works neatly. Some of the nice things that they've discovered, as you go south, it looks to me like Heinsberg and Charlotte now work as single town, single member districts. Richmond continues to work as a single town, single member district. Another difficult area is down in Middlebury. That's one of the places where I still have an issue. There's one, I forget which one of them, but there's a district down there that's just too small. And I need to figure out how the municipality of Middlebury works. Tom Koch pointed out that I really screwed up how the lines are drawn within Barry Town and Barry City, but I have not gone. One of my things I haven't finished getting to is to go into the municipalities like Montpelier, like Barry, like Middlebury, and look at the actual district maps that were passed in the small maps where it's just a district map, and recreate them, and then work from there. I haven't done that there. I've done that in Burlington with all of the maps there. I started exactly with the maps as they were configured, and it's you split the 2-member districts, and it's just a question of shifting, one block here, one block there. The south and the southern part of the state, and actually the single-member districts work out pretty neatly. It looks like Manchester now works as a single-member, single-town district pretty nicely. Where you get into problems with maintaining town boundary lines is like north, Springfield and North Bellows falls in north. It's just very difficult to get the town lines to line up neatly. So you'll see that a couple of them there where you're splitting, you have these sort of hybrid districts with, like that red district right there. I mean, that's a perfect example where it doesn't work perfectly in one town and you have to bleed over into the other. That right along the Connecticut River there is where that seems to happen most. So I'm gonna, jump back into this and either try and fix this one or start over using what I've learned and try to get that 150th district to fit someplace, which I think is going to be somewhere around Essex.
Rob, I got a few initial questions. Did you track whether this so far, and understanding it's a work in progress, whether this results in a shift in the number of House members from one region to the other, to another at all? In other words, from the far south to the northwest?
Well, since it's not complete and I have to figure out where that last district comes in, that will probably indicate a shift of one district up to the northwest from somewhere else, either the Northeast Kingdom or Addison County.
And I don't think District Builder tracks the number of tracks when a town has been subdivided and put into two different districts, but did you track that?
No, since I haven't finished it, that's easy to count once it's done, but
and the other sort of global thing I'm interested in is whether this approach ends up with less compactness.
Well, I don't think it ends up with less compactness. I mean, anytime you a single member district, it's geographically by definition more compact than a 2-member district. And I've tried to keep, for the most part, along the same, at least conceptual districts as much as I could from the last time around.
Well, and we have, the existing map has some districts that are not perfectly compact, for sure. The Wyndham Bennington one that we heard about earlier is one of those. Eric, could you scroll? Did you see that? Could you scroll so that we could see Wyndham and Bennington counties? There we go.
I have a quick question for Rob. Thank you, by the way, for sharing this. Is it at all possible to see somewhere, what towns are in what districts, besides just looking at so zooming in far enough?
Well, not on District Builder, unfortunately. I thought that was going to be an upgrade that happened in mid-September, but it doesn't look like it did, putting in the town lines. So when I've been putting this together, I have a printout of the current district maps that I referenced, and there is a geographic map that I found that has all the stuff that is on Maptitude, but it's not Maptitude, so it's a second reference. I think I gave you that link, did I not?
I can't remember, Rob. I'm not sure.
But I'll share that link with the group because it's a good resource, and it has all the town names. You can click on the town. It has all the roads. It has the mountain, the geographic stuff with the mountains and the rivers. And I've been using that as a cross reference as I put them together.
I think
so you just kind of have to look at the other different maps and figure out what towns they are for the most part. I'm sorry, Jeannie. I more than anybody wish that feature that was easy to do.
I mean, I totally get that. I think I may be using a similar, you're talking about the the geographic information map,
Yeah.
the Vermont,
Hang on. think
I always get the acronym wrong, the Vermont, I don't see it
Center for
now, but
Geographical
anyway,
Information.
yeah, Center for Geographical Information, sorry about that. That is a great resource, absolutely, yeah. Okay, thank you.
One other thing I should say about in putting together the maps, just looking at that Springfield map where you sort of have that light green district that's not a complete town and bleeds over into two. What I try to do is look at we think of the municipal boundaries as the town lines, which we should. But I've also tried to look at where can we look at municipal lines within the towns, like we're wanting to say that didn't work. But just from my community of Stowe, you have Stowe, which is the big town that you see on there, but there's also Moscow, which is a little section of Stowe. And one of the things I tried to look at and Stowe Hollow is another section of Stowe, which is not as official, but that lower left-hand corner is Moscow. And it might have made sense to put Moscow and Waterbury at Waterbury Center, which is the more rural part of Waterbury, not the rural village, because those two are actually pretty well connected, economically and geographically. It didn't work. There just weren't enough people in that combination to really make it work. But I've been sort of looking at those little villages within the villages, and I saw that Mr. Cook had a note about how to fix Jericho Underhill. That's been a really contentious spot on the map to me. So if you have something, send it to me. So what I tried to do there is I still managed to get Jericho and Underhill, but it's sort of like the village centers versus the more rural areas of the state is what I try to do. But I'm certainly open to better solutions for there, and that might be subject to change as that Essex problem gets worked out as well.
Eric, could you scroll this so we could look at our old friend, the town of Huntington? Okay. Push it up a bit.
Yeah, that's that sort of grayish down. Huntington's down south. It's the grayish thing there on the right with the point.
It's got the spike in it. Okay. So what did you do there, Rob? Tentatively.
I tried and I tried and I tried. The problem with hooking Huntington so neatly back into Chittenden County is that Charlotte, Heinsberg, and Richmond, which are the towns that abut it, are all perfect single member, single town districts now. So you can't join it with any of them easily. And if you try to make Huntington and Heinsberg or Huntington and Richmond into a two-member district, then that throws off all the other town boundary lines. At least the way I was putting the puzzle together.
So what does this map put Huntington in with?
Let's see. This map puts Huntington in with. Does it go up? No, it puts it in with Waitsfield and Warren.
Okay, and not Waterbury.
Not Waterbury. But I was able to do that.
I wondered whether, and I haven't done the detail on it, but I wondered whether putting that the overflow population in Stowe, taking the Waterbury Center side of Stowe, the Moscow side, and putting that into Waterbury, whether that somehow, with maybe some other adjustments elsewhere, would allow Huntington and Bolton to stay in Chittenden County based house districts. I'm somewhat doubtful, but that was one of the reasons I was interested in the addressing the Stowe issue on that side of Stowe?
Well, I'm certainly open to it. I spent a lot of time trying to figure that one out. And it just, the way I was seeing it is there just aren't enough people in that southern part of Stowe to make it work with Waterbury, because you need to take so many people out of Waterbury, it screws up everything you're trying to do to the east and to the west. There's also the issue that, the number one issue is, or factor that we should be looking at is the town boundary lines. The second one that people said was most important, and I happen to agree with, is the school district lines. And our school district in Stowe is married to Morrisville and Elmore. So it's our school district is north. It's not south to Waterbury, but I'm open to it. I'm open to it. I mean, you could take, if you follow Route 100 up, you could put Moscow and the and Stowe Hollow, that whole southern part of the district, in with that blue, that light blue, and see where it gets you. But on the right hand side, or the eastern side of the reservoir, and then the eastern side of Route 100. Everything to the left, I think, would be, if you try to put the people to the west of the reservoir in with Stowe, they really are isolated. There's no roads. You have to go all the way around the reservoir and back up to link up with, any connection to Stowe. That really, I do think, is more linked to Bolton and Waterbury South.
I have a quick other comment, if that's all right.
Sure, go right ahead.
I was just zooming in on part of Addison County and the district I'm currently in. And I'm using, it sounds sort of slightly like a NIMBY remark, but it's mostly just because I know what I'm looking at. So it makes it easier for me to use this as an example. But so right now the map that's being shown, you can see Bristol and then a kind of a peachy colored, the rest of what's currently Addison 4, exactly. Because earlier you said something which sounds like it might be true in some cases, or maybe even often, which is Tom asked you about compactness and the idea that if you're reducing to single member, you're just going to get more compact districts, but that's really not always true. And these two here are a good illustration of that. The Bristol portion, the brown one, and the rest of it, there's no way, that they're each, Bristol might be slightly more compact, but the other part is not. Combined, that would be a more compact district. It'd be more like a rectangle versus either one that's kind of thin and stretched out. If you get what I'm saying. Does that, I mean, it's just an observation. It's that just, the exercise of breaking apart some 2-member districts into 1-member districts could in fact decrease compactness, like I think is happening here. That's all.
And Gina, what's to the east of Bristol there? Is that Starksboro?
It's Lincoln, Starksboro, and then it's Lincoln, Starksboro, and a kind of wraparound piece of Moncton.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Jeremy, go ahead.
So while I appreciate the discussion and sort of looking at the nuances of the different towns, I guess I'd like to share my philosophy as I'm going about this, because I was trying to build maps with single member districts too, and ran into a lot of the same like stresses, like it just, you can't get there from here, right? It just doesn't work, and required some sort of creative and in some cases not good layouts of the districts. What I tried to do is I tried to think, what's kind of the fair way, what's the reasonable way that you can make these decisions that some of these are going to turn out badly. And so what I tried to do is anytime I had to divide a town, or a city for that matter, I tried not to have the town be in more than one multi-town district. So if we had to split Bristol, for example, it would only be, so it might have, one internal district. I think Bristol's large enough to justify, even if it's not large enough to justify an internal district and a separate district. I tried to really only split it once so that you wouldn't have 3 parts of a town that would be in districts with different towns. I hope that makes sense. And when I made those splits, I made sure that there was always a reasonable road. And I'm not necessarily talking about, the dead end road that, that terminates, a mile up up the hill in the other town, which that certainly happens in a couple places around here. But where you actually had a thoroughfare where you could get there from here. And this is in, thinking about towns like currently the Washington-Chittenden district, where, in order for the reps who live in Waterbury to get down to Buell's Gore or what have you, they have to go out of their district to come back in. So I tried to, as much as possible, preserve, and I think that was actually one of the metrics that's used in Maptitude, reachability within a district. Can you actually get to all of the addresses? So I've not spent a lot of time looking at Rob's map here. I think it looks good. I think we need to solve that, missing district 13, unlucky 13. But,
Oh, it is 13. That's a good catch.
Thank you. But yeah, so I'm running into the same problems, and I kind of came at it from just a different part of the state. I actually just used a random number generator, and I ended up with Guilford, and I just started from there, and I'm almost done. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there, where, how are we resolving these sorts of things where we get some of these, dogleg districts that maybe they don't conform to reality or topography, but can we at least say that there's a way to get there on a road, that we only split a town once, that we at least have some sort of like justifiable, defensible approach for solving these, like the Bolton thing, without having to twist ourselves into knots, that is. So I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, no, that's good. Where I try to do those splits, Jeremy, is I often look for a river. Unless I know the area, well, like I know Stowe, but it's in some of the Addison County stuff, you'll see, I've used the river to define it. Thinking that might be sort of people on one side of the river are linked in transportation wise and community wise, and that would be a logical barrier. I could be wrong, but that's just my thought. If anybody has any better ideas.
So Rob, remind us where you, is there a part of the state that you're still doing most of your work on to fill this out, or is it in more than one place?
No, I've got it. As I said, I've done the really population centers, Burlington. I've sort of gone in and really fine-tuned those maps. I've done it for Burlington. I've done it for Rutland. I still need to do it for Montpelier and Barry and Middlebury. I have problems in Chittenden County. If you zoom out a little bit, Eric, please see that brown Colchester that up there. That's too small right now. That's about 1,000 people short. So I've got to figure out where I can pull in 1,000 people into that Colchester district, and that's gonna, that's gonna create a whole bunch of problems. I have a district that's down by Middlebury that's that has way too few people, and I can't remember which one it is. I think, is it that tan one? Maybe. And there's some areas over around St. Johnsbury that really need to get cleaned up. So that's where my efforts are going to be to get them out. to the point where I say it's kind of finished.
Where did you end up so far with the folks in Corinth?
Hmm.
I think you put Williamstown and Washington into the district together, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So that's,
Sorry, my chicken scratches here that have towns with numbers associated with some of them. Corinth is one.
Yeah, if you look
all
at
right,
it,
so
right under the yellow there, there's a light blue, and I believe that toward the left is Williamstown, toward the right is Washington.
Mhm.
I mean, Corinth,
And
Corinth is due north of Vershire. So they would be in with Vershire, Chelsea, and Brookfield.
Why can't I find Corinth?
yeah, that's a, that's a long district to campaign in.
It's on Dirt Road.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Rob, good job. Thanks for getting us this.
Good start.
And Jeremy, do you have a sense of when you might be getting us your working draft?
Well, I can show you where I'm at right now. I'm sort of I'm trying to finish up in northern Addison and into southern Chittenden County, but I have the rest of the state. We can poke around if that's useful. I can share my screen if
Looking at I think we have some time to do that. I also want to give Jean, Jean has been working around the state in a certain pattern, and that has some stuff to share with us. But Jeremy, if you'd like to, we can get yours up.
Sure, 1 second. Hey, Eric, could you give me presenter rights?
And let's see, not already. I'm just going to make you the host for right now. It's not giving me an option to expressly give you presenter rights, but that should now allow you to.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now.
Yes. Mhm.
Great. Okay, so like I said, I'm still working on filling in some of the gaps here. Like I said, I started down in Guilford. I didn't want to pick any place, where I felt I had any sort of investment or anything like that. So I picked Guilford and I just started there. Same philosophy. I think as I shared before, I tried to, as much as possible, keep towns whole. I only would divide towns once into some external sharing district. Tried to go by town lines, and looks like I missed a river down here actually. But yeah, and some of these definitely need to be fixed up. Like just in order to conform to town lines, I ended up with these really high deviation districts, and that would need to be wiggled around quite a bit to make that work correctly. But like just slowly go up.
What did you, can we just go back down? What did you do with the town of Bennington two-member districts? If you could just take a peek at that.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, there's that red is a river that I didn't account for.
Those are fun, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
So this is, and are these district numbers, new numbers that you've created for the map, Jeremy?
Yep, I just made these up just for my own reference, and these are not super consistent. So I'll have like county -3-4, and it may not even be in that, connected to the city or the town that it started in the first place, just because I move things around and readjust. So no, I'd have to go back and readjust all of that.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't have any sort of attachment to this. There's no ego here. I would be happy to pitch this over the wall to the Bennington officials and say, break it up into 3 districts. It as long as they're they fit into whatever population.
So putting that town, which is now two-member districts, you're tentatively making it 3 single-member districts, but is there any piece of it that then gets pushed into a different district?
Oh, yeah, I should have noted over here. Yeah, there is a chunk that does go into this other Bennington Wyndham district, which is a bit, not a bit, it's actually quite large.
That's Woodford.
Reedsboro, Searsburg, Somerset, Glastonbury, Sunderland.
And Pownell and Stamford are together in this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that little bit of the southeast corner of Bennington goes in with Woodford, Somerset, Searsburg, the metropolis of Glastonbury.
Yeah, and honestly, if we didn't want to make this include anything in Wyndham County, we could take Somerset out. But I did that because the road access to Somerset is better from this side than from this side, from Dover.
Okay.
So who wants to campaign in that district?
Are you volunteering, Tom?
No, thanks.
Okay, could you scroll up to just for comparison purposes, take a look at the Stowe, Waterbury, Duxbury, Huntington.
Yeah, so still working on the Chittenden County parts of that, but I did end up combining part of Waterbury and part of Stowe. So let me go up here. So, and I violated my own rule here, where I had part of Stowe going with Morristown and part of Stowe going with Waterbury. And this could be shifted around a little bit, I think, but I wasn't able to find a way to cleanly connect Stowe with anything else without violating that rule.
And scroll over to show us the sort of Bolton, Huntington, see what we did.
It's just Bolton, Underhill.
And Huntington's
not allocated yet. I haven't gotten that far.
Okay, all right, okay, got it. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Jeremy?
Can you send that to us?
When I'm done, I can, and I have to find a way to actually get it off of the server. So hopefully.
We may have an update on that question in under other business or updates of the good work that this is where I think we're all getting an appreciation for the how tricky and challenging this can be. Jean, give us an update about your efforts.
Sure. So I actually have been doing my work on Excel, which sounds like torture, and maybe it is slightly, but it was a function of the fact that I have lots of maps that I'm looking at while I'm doing it, but I had some trouble getting onto Maptitude. I had to rebuild my account at one point, and I had already started working, so I kind of just kept going. And I I did send around the file that's shows some of my work so far. I actually have additional work, but I can just, it's interesting looking at both Rob and Jeremy's maps, because clearly there is some overlap. We've definitely found some of the same solutions, which isn't surprising, I guess. But I did send it around. I don't know whether it's worth us looking at it, given that, you know, looking at an Excel file isn't all that thrilling. But I can just tell you that I've worked on Addison, Rutland, Bennington, and Wyndham, and come up with acceptable solutions for those areas. I also started with the current map. I looked at the largest deviations in both directions and, you know, focused on those first. I actually went for the negative deviations first. Hopefully that won't that won't be too upsetting when I get to all the positive ones. I mean, I've also worked with some of the positive deviations as well, but I did start near home. You know, that there were some negative deviations in Addison County that I started to fix those. And relative to what we were talking about earlier, for example, I did take part of Moncton out of Addison 4 and I gave it to Addison 3 and certain solutions like that. So just as an orientation, the Excel file that I sent around to the board members earlier this morning, just before the meeting, in it, you'll see the current districts, how many members they are, what their populations are, what the deviations are, and so on. And then there's several columns next to it, which is what I've proposed.
Let's see if we can, let's put it up just so.
Okay.
Only briefly.
That's fine. I can, if
Jeannie,
I
do you
can
want to
share.
put it up or do you want me to just pull it up?
You can pull it up, Eric. Fine. Whichever's easier.
I'll just make you the host so that you can see.
Okay. It's fine.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, thanks. Can folks see it?
Yes.
Yep.
So what I'm displaying now is the what I was just mentioning, that these columns, it's G through K, is where I've put the proposed new districts. To the left, some of which is you can't see, is the original districts. And I have hidden the stuff that's not done yet. So you're just seeing what I've, although I did make some progress in the northeast part of the state. So in Orleans, Essex, and Caledonia, I also think I have a workable solution up there also. But anyway, just quickly, I worked with the original districts, the House districts. I went to the places that were where the problem areas were, that were, you know, completely unacceptable deviations, too big. Mostly, I mostly looked at the ones that were too small, but also some that were too big. Same thing, a little that others have discussed. The biggest challenge is the towns are not the right size. So as much as you want to include the whole town, which I certainly tried at every opportunity, it wasn't always possible to do. And so you are faced with the kind of decisions. I too felt the same as Jeremy, you know, others have mentioned, tried my best not, you know, only to use a town in 2 different districts, not more than 2 if I had to do it, for example. Or just paying, one thing I ended up doing was I used Apportionment. So folks may or may not know, there's a lake called Lake St. Catherine that half of the lake is in Poultney and the other half is in Wells. And I needed part of Wells, or I could solve a problem by using part of Wells. So I just kind of included the rest of that lake, which seemed like a natural choice if I was going to do that. Anyway, and then similar, like looking at what Jeremy was showing us a few minutes ago, I also ended up creating a Bennington 1 district that was Pownell and Stamford down at the bottom there, and moved up Woodford and some other things. We don't have to go through it unless people would like me to show examples or have questions. But that was my general approach. Start with what we had, look for where the issues seem to be. There were some districts that I ended up splitting off and either making into two, more likely making part of it a single member and then adjusting the rest of it potentially to make another single member. That happened a couple of times. So far, you can see there's a yellow right here. There's a yellow. That's the only place right now that's more than, or in this case, less than 8.5. It's 8.5%. So it's less than 8% deviation. I don't have anything else right now that's less than 8 or more than +8. So that's, and the city areas that are currently, like Rutland is 4 districts. 2 of them need adjustment. I just left those for now because I determined internally I don't need to grab any more territory to make those work. So I just left those for now, if that makes sense. And the same in Brattleboro. Anything else that would be useful for me to mention?
Could you scroll, push it up a bit so we see the bottom? Windsor, okay.
Yeah, and as I said, I do have another portion that is, I think, complete, but I was hesitant to include it on this spreadsheet until I have a chance to look it over again, because it's very easy to make errors and then it's annoying if I've shared it. And Tom, you did ask before about about whether any area has lost representation overall. That was like another thing that I kept in my mind as I was working, was I was trying to think of whether, looking at the numbers, I was trying to think of whether it was possible to say for districts where there's lost population, whether it was possible to kind of adjust and create new districts in a way that was mostly internal, that didn't really require much grabbing from outside of the county, for example. And more as just a kind of to give myself a framework to work with. And the only place that I just kept coming into problems with so far with respect to that approach was Windham County overall. And so you'll see when you look at this in the quiet of your own home, that Windham 3 and 4 currently are 4 members, but in the way I've broken it down now, it's actually 3. So that's one area that I could not, I wouldn't have had to do it there, but that whole region was one area I could not figure out how to get to work without losing a member. And it ended up, I took out Westminster from Windham 4, and I combined it with Rockingham from Windham 3 and Brookline. And then Putney and Dummerston are a good single member district. So I left that. But as others have said, work in progress.
I meant to ask Rob and Jeremy, this question for you. So far at least, are your working versions, all single member districts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
I stopped sharing. Did people have other questions or would like to see it again?
I think what we will need to do fairly soon, well, at some point, so that we're comparing or looking at apples to apples, is to convert these efforts into the same, I mean, ideally into a maptitude map, so that, which I think is ultimately what we're going need to present in our report, so that we'll need to do that work. I don't think it has to happen immediately, because if you're comfortable working in the formats you are, you should stick with that. But when you're done, I think they need to get converted into maptitude.
I will say, Tom, I am planning on, I'm doing it for my own benefit, frankly. I mean, I'm used to now looking at all of this on an Excel sheet, but it does, it's exhausting. So,
Well, one of the things, yeah,
yeah.
one thing to keep in mind is that in our report, in addition to the map, we have a descriptive narrative section for each district that lists the towns or portions of towns in each district, and contains a narrative about why we chose those towns to put together in that particularly configured district. So the Excel presentation could conceivably come in very handy in that area. I meant to ask, Jean, did you solve the Huntington problem for us?
No, I've managed to avoid the real challenges so far. But in part, I also, even if I hadn't worked out all of this in advance, but as I was working and focusing a fair bit on the districts with high negative deviations, it did become useful to be able to recognize to the, where additional districts could conceivably come from to make up for the, to adjust the high deviation areas. So that actually ended up being useful in my, just general overview of what I was doing. But no, haven't gotten in there yet.
Rob, I want you to not feel bad. One of the maps I did for the House district 10 years ago, when I finished, I realized I had 151 districts, 151 House members.
Yeah, I remember that story, and I've been sniggering in my sleeve for 10 years, and now I sympathize with you 100%.
Anything that you'd like to share from Mary or Ed or Tom in terms of map building?
Not from here. Little I've done is not worth sharing.
Okay.
Well,
Not yet.
I'm still tinkering. Not ready to share yet.
Well, I think we've made some real strides, and I think this is good momentum. We have a long ways to go, but it's good. It's encouraging to see the diligence that you are engaged in. The next, we have about 20 minutes to go here. I see we have some of our friends from Legislative Council. Last Friday, Chris Winters and I were in a part of a meeting, and for a portion of a meeting with the Legislative Council and led by its information technology leadership. And one of the questions that I presented was there had been some concern over how to, if someone on our board is working in Maptitude and creates a draft map, there initially appeared to be some difficulties encountered in getting that in shape to share and to post and to transmit and to print. There was an agreement that that would be addressed. And so that's being worked on. Jeremy, you don't appear, did you have to go through that additional step to get your work ready to post and share?
I honestly haven't tried any of the stuff that I've tried before in terms of if I can connect a USB drive to my computer and then have it have it appear on the remote machine too. When I've used this remote desktop in the past to connect to other machines, I've been able to do that. I've not played with it here. It's been a bit since I've had to do that, so I will try, and I'll work with our support folks to see if I can get that sorted.
Amarin, did you have anything to add to that discussion?
Good morning. For the record, Amarin Abergele, Legislative Counsel. No, Mr. Chair, I do not have anything to add. I think you will be hearing, or at least the Secretary of State's office will be hearing from our folks at IT as they work through those issues with Maptitude and work on how to export high resolution maps.
Okay.
Tom?
Yes.
Sorry. I remembered that I got something from Delia that I haven't had a chance to try to use yet, so that's why maybe I didn't think of it before now. But it was a handout she prepared about sharing maps created in Maptitude, and I don't have, like I said, I haven't tried to use it. She speaks about using a file transferring protocol, which others on this call may be familiar with. I am not, but something called FileZilla.
Okay, well I have something equivalent that could be very helpful. Could you send that along?
Yeah, I certainly will. I apologize for not. She sent it in. It was something I didn't look at right away because I knew that I wasn't ready to use it. But I will definitely forward it to others, and hopefully it will provide. It'll be useful.
Thank you.
Great.
And Tom, I'll just add that Mia is not able to be on the call today. Otherwise, I'm sure she'd be chiming in on the progress with legislative IT, but as soon as they figure something out, I'm sure she'll pass along that information to the board about downloading higher resolution maps, sharing maps in Maptitude. We'll keep you posted as soon as we come up with a solution with legislative IT.
Okay. So I think that brings us to other business and setting the next meeting date or dates. I noticed just this morning, one of the things I try to remember to do is, which sometimes we forget about doing, is take a look at our own website and understanding that other people spend a lot more time on our website than we tend to. And I passed this along to Chris already, but our website in many places refers to resources as 2020 resources. And people could get the impression that everything that we have posted in terms of resources is 6 or 9 months old. So we're going to update that to make it clearer that our resources are ongoing. And the Secretary of State's office has nicely posted all of the things that we have posted by the individual board member names, so that those are easy to see. I found one link that appeared to not be working that I think we're gonna fix that or remove the link, because there are other ways to get to the same place. In terms of meetings, one of the things that proved helpful 10 years ago, and it might likewise be likewise this time around, is and we did just a little bit of it with the map examples this morning, and that is to have the possibility of some sessions where, for example, Rob could walk us through his map town by town, district by district, at whatever starting point he might choose, to say, this is where I started, this is the district I formed, and this is why, and then move on. It's a very potentially time-consuming effort, but it would give us more insight into the individual choices that he made along the way. If we do that with a quorum of the board present, we have to notice it and hold it as a meeting. Some of that could be done with just two or three at a time, working on them, and there may not be interest among every member of the board in doing that exercise. I know I would be interested in it. At some point, to get to consensus and to be ready to take a vote on a map, at least I need that type of exercise for my decision making. The other thing to think about is whether and when we will need to start meeting more frequently than every other week. Our deadline for getting trying to look up our deadline for getting proposals to the initial proposals to the town boards of civil authority. Chris, do you have that? It's the third week in October.
I don't have that in front of me right now. Let me look for it, Tom, but I believe that's correct. Did we at one point think about moving it back to the 14th or mid-October? I forget. Jeannie, you had a timeline, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at, we revised it. I don't remember what it was before, but what I'm looking at now is the revised one we had set by October 18. Deadline for the lab to make its tentative house plan available to the towns that are required by 17 VSA 1905.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
So that's 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yep.
And I think we picked that date to maybe have a little bit of wiggle room. Statutorily, under the revised statute, I think it might be a week later or 10 days later.
Yeah, because they need the towns, that gave us then our deadline for the towns to respond on November 15th, which is, I guess, 4 weeks. Or in the vicinity of 4 weeks. And then that gives us a further 2 weeks for our final submission to the legislature.
And one thing to keep in mind, in order for the towns, the boards of civil authority to be able to fairly do their work, they will need these proposals to be in sufficient detail for them to know what we're proposing. So if you know, and that really comes into play if we're subdividing a town, they're going to need to know exactly where we're proposing to subdivide it. So they're going to need either a map with a high level of resolution to it, or a written narrative description of it, or both. Understanding, I don't think. Well, let me ask this question of I guess of Chris. The towns presumably can, boards of civil authority can use District Builder because that's an open access software system. But I don't think they're not going to have licenses to use Maptitude. Is that right?
I think that's right, Tom. I want to confirm that, but yeah, it's right that District Builder is open source and anyone can use it. I'm not sure about Maptitude. I presume it takes licensure.
Yeah, it's not going to be available to them. So if I could just come out and say, so that 3-week deadline suggests strongly to me, not that I need any more meetings in my life, but I think we're there. I think we have to start meeting weekly or more often because we need to get this out the door.
I agree.
So that would seem to me to mean, I mean, I have previously blocked off Mondays for this work, or as much of them as I can, and that would give us, if we only meet on Mondays, which would include Monday the 11th, which is that's a state holiday, Chris?
I don't believe it's a state holiday anymore.
Okay.
I'll double check. It was a, what do you call it, floating holiday.
It is still on the state holiday schedule.
It is on there?
I was looking the other day, which is what makes me think that, but I'll check it right now.
Okay. In any case, we can still support the board on that day if you want to meet on that day.
Okay.
Yes, it is still on for 2021. Oh, no, sorry, it is not.
I know it was part of whatever union negotiation for holidays in the last time around.
You're correct. It's not a holiday.
But I share Jeremy's concern that if we try and see how meeting once a week goes for a couple of weeks and to find out we're wrong and it's not enough, it's going to be too late. And we don't have to, we're not delaying individual member or group member work until we have full board meetings, and work groups can be scheduled if it turns out we want to sort of block out 2 or 3 days outside of the Monday meeting routine for come one, come all, if you want, work sessions where someone will put up a map and we'll walk through it and try to come to some consensus on things. We can block out some dates beyond those Mondays for doing that. And or half days. What's your sense about that? I want to be sensitive to schedules at the same time being nervous about getting the work done.
Well, I've blocked off the Mondays like you have. I can make all of them available between now and the deadline, and as for supplementary meetings, I can try to be flexible just with enough advance notice. I can't think of a day that, you know, particularly doesn't work for me, but advance warning is good.
Mondays are also generally free for me, so.
Good. Well, I will check when we get out of the meeting. I will put my head together with Chris on that to make sure that we have the resources we need. And my instinct is to pick some additional dates and notice them as board meetings, because we should, and we just don't know whether we'll have quorums or not. And if we don't have a quorum, then it wouldn't be a meeting, but to have those available to get the work done. I am going to be interested to know how we will be sharing the detailed internal lines of districts when they don't follow town lines, so that the boards of civil authority have that level of detail on which to base their review and commentary. And that's just another reason why being able to share high resolution maps, whether it's District Builder or Maptitude, is important, and understanding the range of technical skills among our statewide audience to be able to show people printable maps. Make it as accessible as we can. Okay. I'll go around the screen. Are there any other business that you would like to bring up? At this meeting, or are we ready to adjourn? And keep in mind, you know where to find me if there's something you're concerned about that you'd like to take up with me. I'm at your convenience.
Just one question, Tom, if I could. The survey that we went over, the preliminary results last meeting, do we have the final compilation of that with all the public comments?
That is posted on the website on the resources page. So you can find it there.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And if you want, we did take off, folks entered their street address, phone number and email. We took those off, but we put on the public website. But if you wanted a spreadsheet with all that information, if you wanted to reach out to any of those people, you're welcome to it. Just let me know.
Thank you.
I found one instance in working with District Builder where its arithmetic didn't seem to be right. So I'd like to rely on that printout of the populations of the towns. But I couldn't get it to print on my printer. Is there another source I can get it without having to keep switching back and forth on the computer?
So if I understand, Tom, you want a printable version of the town by town population?
Right, and John Adams posted that several weeks ago.
Okay, we'll get it for you.
Yep, we'll make sure you get it, Tom.
Okay, appreciate it.
And Tom, I'm just gonna make note of Andy McLean's comment in the chat as a town clerk. Anything that we can do to give more time to get the BCA work done. And I just wonder if it's appropriate for us to maybe do another communication to the town clerks, or maybe on Muninet, to tell them what the window is, so that they can
Yeah.
maybe even put a placeholder in there for a BCA meeting.
Yeah, let's do that in the next 48 hours.
Okay.
We want to walk right up to the point of being a pest. Okay. Thanks all for your work. Keep up the work. It's a tough slog, but it's worth it. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
Jeannie has something. Jeannie has something. Don't go yet.
No, I just wanted to thank the folks who were attending from the public. I appreciate your being here and offering your suggestions and comments. It's very helpful. Thank you.
You're here.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.